I didn't expect to be reviewing Blasphemous II quite so soon after the first. You know how it goes, sometimes you get into the groove with a series and spin through them in short order, though in the interest of not making the blog entirely boring, I try to at least space out franchise reviews. Other times, you finish a really good game and then you just need to have a break to get back in fulfilled contentment. It's so good to be back in Cvstodia. You're listening to the almighty Backlog. I'm Ellie and today's review is on Blasphemous II. Available for PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One and Xbox Series XS. This review is based on the PC version. Originally released in August of 2023, developed by The Game Kitchen and published by Team 17, it's a Metroidvania, and How Long to Beat has an average playtime of about 22 hours. The big point of contention I had going into Blasphemous 2 was one of atmosphere. Part of the reason the first game stood out so sharply to me, and a major reason that it resonated so strongly for me, lasting in my mind for well after I'd rolled credits and uninstalled the game, is its atmosphere. I'm a big believer in the sheer weight of a well-crafted one. It's a transformative aspect to a game. I'm not one to think that the worth of a game comes down to a singular thing, like a strong mechanic or a great narrative, but if there is one thing that comes close that can elevate even a bland game to something memorable, it is a brilliantly built vibe. The first Blasphemous was in the unenviable position of nailing not just the atmosphere, but also the rest of what makes a game good. The twisted, dark fantasy take on Catholic imagery filled its world with an incredibly bleak life as the Grievous Miracle came to shape and define the lives of Cvstodia in a horrifying, warped facsimile of faith. The end result is a game world inextricably linked to its narrative, with characters, locations and background storytelling all weaving together into one glorious whole that was, in turn, also clear in the brutality of its protagonist, the Penitent One. A sequel then carries with it a lot of questions. Was there a need for it, or how could the feeling of the first game be recreated or improved upon? It was the latter query in particular that hovered in my mind. Blasphemous' aesthetic, its music, its all-encompassing hopelessness in the face of a tortured and bloody existence, all of these are exquisite, and so hitting those heights again felt like a tall order, let alone finding a way to iterate on them that would feel satisfying. And what to even do about the character of the Penitent One, whose entire existence seems tied to that time and place? The answer that Blasphemous 2 comes up with was unexpected. Our hero returns, but to a Cvstodia that has lived for what seems like centuries free of the miracle. Encased in a great stone coffin, held by the petrified remains of our old friend Diogracias, the Penitent One resurrects due to the returning presence of the miracle, which has spent the years trying to find a way back into the minds and souls of the people of the world. Evidently, it had a breakthrough, as a massive heart hangs in the sky above a mighty cathedral, and a new power, the Archconfraternity, enforces the miracle's will and worship across Cvstodia. Upon his awakening, the Penitent One is met by Annunciada, a godlike woman wreathed in a glimmering golden halo of cherubim. She tasks him with hunting down the miracle's latest disciples in order to prevent the heart in the sky bursting forth with a new avatar of the miracle to reassert rule over Cvstodia. At first, I was a little sceptical of this as a plotline. After all, the presence of the miracle in Blasphemous is such an intrinsic part of the world, so the idea of it simply coming back could very easily have fallen flat. What's incredible about Blasphemous 2 is the way that this new iteration of Cvstodia straddles a tight line between the new post-miracle setting and the effect of its rapid return. There aren't quite the halls lined with mutilated penitents or vast flocks of capirote-clad worshippers moaning and writhing in pain and supplication, but the horrifying power of the miracle hasn't gone entirely without note. Hordes of new mutated monsters roam the streets, while the various NPCs we meet bemoan and pontificate on the impact the miracle's return has had on both themselves and on the world around them. What's particularly exciting is the way that the miracle is now only a singular part of the world of Cvstodia. Veterans of this blog might remember my review of Final Fantasy X-2, in which I spent a little while waffling about the value of sequels, especially when they come after works which fundamentally threaten, change or break apart their setting. One of the few things I had a lot of unmoderated praise for in that review was the way that 10.2 tries to show Spira adapting awkwardly to the change in regime and to the different reactions to that. There are revolutionaries, formerly beleaguered nations carving a new niche, and a conservative religious group trying to re-establish a fractured power base. Blasphemous II has a similar vibe in that much of Cvstodia feels like it has actively moved on in the intervening years. Where once there was a crumbling and decrepit village, there now stands a proud city, while an affluent suburb with ghastly, Bloodborne-esque spirits that prowl the lamplit streets has sprung up. Where in Blasphemous the Penitent One clambered up cold and forbidding mountains, now he ascends ornate aqueducts that stretch like scaffolding around a skyline once studded by endless church spires. Twisted woods with gnarled branches that reach out to ensnare him, gloomy mansions in which bodies hang in cocoons of gold spun like silk, a proud, wax-encrusted cathedral that stabs down through the ground and hangs upside down in a vast cavern are all places that the Penitent One finds himself in this new quest. Delving below the hub city, down below the immense and barren halls that house rusted, ringing bells, sees us drop into the rotting chambers of the Mother of Mothers, the final cathedral from the first game, which in turn serves as a potent reminder of the version of itself Cvstodia has left behind, lifeless, servile, and buried. And yet, religion clearly hasn't been entirely abandoned as an idea in Cvstodia, it's just been redistributed. The NPCs we meet are no longer suffering worshippers, but instead pray to new gods and new ideas. After generations of the miracle, I suppose it's reasonable that the people wouldn't entirely be able to break from the cycles of their forebears. Some that we meet live healthier existences than in the first, but it's a surface-level sense of optimism. Look any deeper and you can see that Cvstodia is still a prison to a dangerous and brutal form of faith. A dying woman lies caught between dreaming and the afterlife until her own daughters, themselves locked in unceasing slumber, are found and dispatched both in the real world and in her dreams. A master sculptor hacks away feverishly at a vast menhir, desperate to carve in stone the likeness of his god, the Most Blessed Lady. A father prays for seeds of wax to be planted before him and grow new mothers for his child. While the first game is more obvious, with its grim and vicious depiction of the fervour of faith, the sequel shows us it is still hard-baked into the very firmament of Cvstodia. Small wonder then that the miracle found an avenue to return. One of the aspects of Blasphemous that I was notably impressed by was its level and depth of customization. As we've seen before, some Metroidvanias are more exploration focused and others are more combat based, and the first game is emphatically the latter. The expectation then was that 2 would continue that trend and offer a satisfying and extensive level of combat personalisation. That absolutely is the case, and in fact it iterates on the first game's format in a surprisingly broad way. The most obvious of these lies in its weapon choices. In the first game, the Penitent One was armed with just the Mea Culpa, a sword which he wielded with great skill. However, here you get to use not 1 but 3. Ruego al Alba, a sword with a similar moveset to the Mea Culpa, Veredicto, a heavy censer on a chain used like a mace, and Sarmiento and Centella, a paired rapier and dagger. Each of these corresponds to a common archetype in games. Veredicto is slow and unwieldy, but very powerful. Sarmiento and Centella are individually weak but very fast and can chain attacks together quickly, and Ruego al Alba is the balanced option. Each of these has a unique upgrade tree to follow along with, as opposed to Blasphemous' singular Mea Culpa heart path, so there are more opportunities to specialise as you progress through the game. The other thing about the weapons is that they each have a distinct combat mechanic. Veredicto can be lit on fire to deal additional damage, and its upgrade path leans into its lack of speed by letting you charge up attacks for massive hits. The trade-off comes in your manoeuvrability, as it can't be used to block or counter. Ruego al Alba allows the Penitent One to trade his health in for more powerful attacks, which I personally found gave a huge swing to difficult fights in my favour more often than not, though it's obviously a risky strategy. My personal favourite, Sarmiento and Centella, want you to rack up lengthy combo strings without being hit, and as you do they burst into lightning and add on absolutely ridiculous amounts of elemental damage to your attacks, but they reset if you get hit, meaning that they require careful reading of an enemy to know when to block or dodge. All of them also aid in exploration, which I thought was a fantastic choice because it encourages you to play around with all 3 and ideally get good with switching between them without breaking a combo. Veredicto can be used to chime mystical bells that cause doors and barriers to evaporate. Ruego al Alba lets you cling to turning roots that grow from the side of platforms, and Sarmiento and Centella can do short-range rapid teleportation between statues of angels that hold enchanted mirrors. What this means is that Blasphemous II winds up with a bit more personalization than the first game, but also wants its players to demonstrate mastery with all 3 weapons in order to fully explore. This is daunting, in fairness. If you struggle with motor skills at all, or like me are just a bit clumsy, it can come across as inaccessible, especially as there are lots of sections toward the later stages of the game that need you to flick between the weapons at speed during platforming. But the feeling of landing them is intoxicating. A couple of aspects from Blasphemous make a return, albeit in an altered way. As in the first game, here we can collect relics which are used to expand our platforming skills. However, in the first game, the relics were managed through a cumbersome system, as you could only equip a limited number at a time, and so a not insubstantial amount of time was spent swapping things around in menus as the platforming challenges changed around you. Here, that's been done away with. There are only a bare handful of relics, and once you attain them, they are always equipped and active, so that's a win for player friendliness at least. Rosaries also make a return as one of our passive bonus equips. These, just as in the first game, offer small-scale background stat changes, such as resistance to specific damage types, increases in our own output, or changes to the cost of casting spells, among other things. There are only 5 slots here though, so the choice of what you equip is more limited compared to the first game. Most rosary beads you collect come in a sequence. For example, you can find defense boosting rosaries that are ranked 1, 2, 3, so on, so you can make the choice of spreading your bonuses more widely or stacking ones for a significant boost to a single narrow area. Yet again, spells in Blasphemous are presented as prayers, though this time they are split into verses and chants. The former are short, quick spells that primarily care about casting a specific type of damage, whereas the latter have bigger effects and therefore cost more to cast. You can equip one of each, so once again the focus is on customizing your experience to suit your playstyle. Just as before, a spell-based build is both very possible and very powerful, though trickier to use and get going with compared to focusing on a weapon style. Your mana, here styled as fervour, is the primary thing affected when you die, as Blasphemous 2 inflicts guilt as a status effect as a punishment for biting it, which reduces your overall fervour until you recollect your icon from your place of death. It's one of the lightest Soulsborne style touches. It adds a twinge of peril to failure, but without being overly punitive. The most significant new addition is the Altarpiece of Favours. Throughout the game, players can find little statuettes of various archetypal figures within the myth of Cvstodia, some of which are even of known characters from the first game, like the penitent knight Chrysanta, or our old buddy the walking law machine that was Diogracias. These icons each have passive bonuses that run the gamut of possibilities, ranging from ones that buff our weapons to things that care about prayers or guilt. Up to 8 can be slotted into our altarpiece to confer their personal perks to the Penitent One, which gives us a staggeringly wide array of options to play with. If you're familiar with the charms from fellow Metroidvania and indie darling Hollow Knight, these are not dissimilar in that some of them interact to produce new hidden effects, and finding out which ones of these do so requires either a lot of patience or some great luck, or I guess just an internet guide. What this amounts to is a game that is somehow even more mechanically rich than its predecessor. The changes made from Blasphemous to its sequel are the kind you love to see. Some smooth out problems or quibbles from the first game, while others expand and enhance the level of depth and customization. It was mind-boggling at first, but none of the ways the game works are actually that challenging to understand, and it manages to do the often difficult task of overlaying an array of options for the player without being utterly overwhelming. I've seen some commentary online that between the extra options and the different weapons, Blasphemous 2 runs the risk of being too easy, but I have to say that's not an opinion I share. I died quite a lot in this game, both to the series' trademark lavish and excellently designed boss fights, but also just to plenty of random world enemies that claimed my scalp. I think actually it's one of those games where the added options sometimes make you feel a bit invincible, but the game is quick to remind you that is not the case. I hadn't intended Blasphemous 2 to be my 400th review. Over the years, I've tried to make what I term my milestone reviews, that is, every 50th and 100th one, to be either games with a lot of historical resonance for me, or ones that feel notable to have crossed off, like, say, Final Fantasy XIII, after years of it being on my shelf. Blasphemous 2 doesn't fit into either category. It's just a fabulously good game that I had a wonderful time playing through, and getting the chance to spend a milestone review gushing about a really bloody good game is always something that I prefer to do. If you've not played either Blasphemous or the sequel, I honestly recommend them with the most gusto I can manage, but of the pair, I have to say I think 2 pips it for me. This is most definitely not what I expected of it before going in, but everything comes together in a way that I could only describe as miraculous. The final score is 7 out of 7. Top tier. As close to perfect as it gets, this is a game that surpasses any faults it might have and comes with the highest of recommendations. A must play. This has been Ellie on the Almighty Backlog. You can support this project by reading the review over on thealmightybacklog.wordpress.com, or by listening to the pod review hosted on wherever you get your podcasts and YouTube. Please feel free to follow me over on Mastodon, Blue Sky and/or Backlog by following the links on the blog. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can do so by donating via PayPal to thealmightybacklog@gmail.com, or by hitting the donate button on the blog. Thank you for listening, and have a lovely day.